When I joined Marriott about 7 years ago, we came to the conclusion as a team that we were underrepresented in Africa. And we felt that we needed to leapfrog the competition. And we acquired 4 and a bit years ago now Protea. That was the first M&A transaction in Africa. And to this very day, it means the only investment made by international hotel industry into Africa in an operating company was the one we made in acquiring Protea 4.5 years ago for $200 million. And of course, 2 years ago came the acquisition of Starwood, when Marriott acquired Starwood. As a result of these acquisitions and our Marriott organic growth, we are now in 21 countries in Africa with 136 hotels and 24,000 keys in operation. We employ 35,000 associates in Africa. And in addition to that, today we have 65 hotels under construction that, once they open, will actually expand our footprint from 21 countries to 27 countries in Africa. So I think I can look back and safely say that, frankly, had we not acquired Protea, had Marriott not acquired Starwood, there's no way that organic growth alone would have got us to this size and scale. Having got to this size today, of course, we're offering our owners, our investors, our real estate investors in Africa, the breadth of 29 brands to develop more hotels across the Africa continent.
Right. And of course, there's also this model that we continue to see today of low asset, right asset, running of the hospitality industry. We've seen different hotels deciding not to actually get into the business of constructing the hotels, but actually, working hand in hand with an investor who's actually gone into the real estate sector. How is that model, viable for you? Are you doing that direction? Do you think this will work?
Marriott is a manager and franchisor of hotels. Our real estate partners are the partners who actually invest in developing the hotel. So if you look at our 136 hotels in Africa today, they would represent an investment for our owners of about $4.3 billion would have been invested by our real estate owners, trusting our brands to invest their money in that portfolio of hotels. Our 65 hotels, probably talking about another $2.4 billion. So looking at the portfolio of investment, we're saying that our owners, our real estate partners, have entrusted us with nearly $7 billion of investment in real estate in the hospitality industry in Africa.
Mm-hmm. And what then do you think is the flip side of this model? What sort of challenges still stand on the way on this model?
Look, the model of partnership of Marriott with our owners can only work if it's a win-win. And of course, we live in a continent where you have, from time to time, geopolitical shocks into the system. But the thing about this industry is a long-term industry. It's not one where you jump in today and decide you're going to jump out 2 or 3 years later for a quick buck. It's an industry for the long term. It's a marriage. It's a long-term marriage. And in doing so, we commit to our owners, and our owners commit to us, that we'll work together as partners through very good times and sometimes very challenging times. I can look at a country which is very close to my heart in Africa, which is where I was born, in Egypt. And you can look at, just in the last few years, all the various geopolitical shocks that have gone through Egypt, with changes in presidents and the riots that we had in Tahrir Square a few years ago. Well, Marriott has been in Egypt for nearly 40 years. And we've come through all of the crises with our owners intact and all our associates. So it's an industry where you have to be in there for the long term.
Right. Some people have argued that this issue of Africa being a risky continent to invest in as far as hospitality is concerned is actually usually blown out of proportion as one of the components that actually affect the sector. Do you agree?
I can give you a response by saying all of our owners in Africa are African. And that is the model. The model is when you have local investors investing in their country, that is the kind of insight and that's the kind of commitment that makes a success story. And so the thought that this is a risky industry is all about both the owner and the operator, us, Marriott, sitting down and saying, what is a win-win formula here for this plot of land in this location? What shall we develop together? And actually making sure that the terms of that partnership are actually a win-win for both parties.
Right. Let's now talk a bit about the practical projects that Marriott is actually working on. Africa, everybody is now looking at Africa. The button for investment, they say, it is actually switched on right now. And we've actually seen from the dynamics, the numbers, Africa's GDP is actually double that of the entire world combined as far as 2019 is concerned. Everybody wants to come and invest in Africa because of the returns on investment. How is Marriott positioning itself to actually fight off or win off this competition that is actually coming in?
Well, we are very excited. I think there's three things that make us stand up above our competition from our owners' eyes. First, of course, is our actual presence in Africa today. We have real substance in our presence. We have 250 professionals based in Africa, not at individual hotels, actually supporting our hotel operations. That critical mass based in Cape Town and Johannesburg is second to none, right? And that's key because our owners then understand our commitment to Africa. We have Africans running our businesses in Africa. Second is the strength of our loyalty program. Today, roughly 50% of all room nights in our hotels across the board are from our loyalty program members. And that is a very, very powerful proposition for an owner, knowing that when he or she develops a hotel with Marriott, the base occupancy of roughly 50% is going to come from loyalty members. I think it's an extremely powerful proposition. And the third one is our passion about people. We put people first. Our training, development for our people in Africa, looking at how we can develop the next generation of African leaders for the industry. This is huge for our owners. They want to know that we're going to be training and developing local talent. 99.9% of our 35,000 people in Africa today are Africans. So that is a very, very important consideration for owners when they're looking at us as a prospective partner.
Now moving on, with the Africa Hotel Investment Forum, one of the biggest events in the hotel and hospitality industry, over questions on next and whether such a forum can be action-oriented never fail to come up. In the following conversation, of course, Eugene Anangwe went ahead to speak to Mark Willis, Accor Hotels Chief Executive Officer for Middle East and Africa, for more.
Well, I think, for starters, great to see so many people at the conference. It looks really well attended. There's a super vibe, as there is often at this conference. What's also a positive for me is that there's not just the general talk about investment into Africa as a continent. The conserve element is a focus for everybody, not least Accor and Accor Hotels. And yeah, I think it's nice to see that that's on the table and a real discussion point. And you've seen from some of the panels this morning, some of the discussions this morning, while statistics, macroeconomics, the commercial environment are all a key focus at these type of things. It's nice that the conservation piece is really being put on the table and a heavy discussion out in the show.
Mm-hmm. And so probably before we get deeper into Accor's business, as far as you know, the big announcements are concerned at this forum, I want to read your thoughts as well on what are your expectations after this forum, because most of the time we've had critics say that we actually make big announcements here, but then you know a lot goes on the same once everybody leaves these kind of forums. So what is your expectations at the end of this?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily agree with the big announcements. I mean, obviously for such forums, people want to talk about their development pipeline. Accor and all the other brands want to show growth. But you know, for us, we are interested in the right growth with the right partners. And that you can see with, for instance, the recent partnership made with Mantis, again, coming back to the conservation piece, heavily involved in doing business, but doing the right business. Yes, there's plenty of announcements at the conference, but I would disagree that they are announcements without foundation when you look at the growth in Africa as a whole from the tourism sector. Contributes 10% of GDP on the continent, of which 65% is local tourism, Africa inbound tourism. So I think there's lots of positives to take away from the conference now and also historically.